Dear listener, before the story begins, I ask you to subscribe to my channel. This is the best motivation at the start. And we are starting. I've never been one to harbor biases or dwell on the past, always believing that a person's history before our paths crossed was largely irrelevant. People evolve, err, and sometimes act without full awareness. Their prior experiences were not my concern. At least that's what I believed until I found myself in a situation that challenged this perspective. I was prepared to accept and forgive any missteps from my former spouse's recent history. Had she engaged in prostitution or served time in prison, I likely would have understood. However, the revelation that emerged from her past was beyond my capacity to comprehend. Emily and I shared our lives for approximately 3.5 years. Following our modest nuptials, I moved into her residence, renting out my own apartment since it would be cared for, and the extra income would benefit our household. Our life together seemed harmonious, and I only knew her positive attributes. This was her third marriage, and my second. My previous wife and I had amicably parted ways before I encountered Emily. There's nothing negative to say. We simply had incompatible personalities, passions, and perspectives. She has since found happiness in a new family, and I'm genuinely pleased for her. The catalyst for this entire narrative occurred half a year ago, when new management took over at my place of employment. The previous proprietor sold the company and relocated abroad, while the incoming CEO nearly overhauled the entire staff, retaining only a select few, myself included. The new boss and I developed an excellent rapport, quickly finding common ground. He proved to be a decent individual, just 5 years my senior. Admittedly, he did test me a couple of times, which almost prompted me to resign upon discovery. However, he reassured me, explaining that in today's business world, trust is a rare commodity, and even he had been betrayed by unexpected sources. He assured me that if our working relationship continued to thrive, he would offer me the position of his right-hand man. Despite our friendship, he showed no favoritism when it came to professional matters. Not even to me, although I had never let him down. He also had zero tolerance for overfamiliarity or any breaches of workplace hierarchy. In the presence of other staff, associates, and clients, we addressed each other by our full names, especially during meetings. However, in more casual settings, such as when we were alone in the office enjoying coffee or cognac, we used our first names. He had a deep passion for billiards and bowling and frequently invited me to join him as his partner. At home, I preferred not to discuss work with my wife. She rarely inquired, primarily concerned with financial stability and affection. The boss, let's refer to him as David, also shared details about his personal life. He was unmarried, but in a relationship with a woman I had briefly met a couple of times. He lived with his sister, let's call her Tracy, who was also single, and together they were raising a 7-year-old boy. When I inquired about the child's mother, his ex-wife, he abruptly changed the subject, making it evident that it was a topic he preferred not to discuss. He questioned why I rarely spoke about myself and my personal life. I responded that he must have reviewed my personnel file, which should contain all the relevant information, and before deciding to retain me, his new head of security must have thoroughly vetted me. He clarified that his focus had been on professional aspects rather than personal matters. He was aware of my marital status and asked why we hadn't had children. I simply stated that it hadn't happened. He requested to see a photo, so I showed him some pictures of Emily from my phone. His demeanor instantly shifted, his hands trembling as he brusquely ordered me back to my workstation. For the remainder of the day, our interactions were minimal and strictly work-related. The following 2 days were similarly curt and solely focused on business matters. Then he summoned me to his office, apologized, and explained, "I'm sorry, man, my nerves just got the better of me with so much going on." He mentioned that his son's birthday was in 2 days and extended an invitation. I asked if he would mind if I brought my wife, but he adamantly refused. Prior to this, I had attempted to get him to open up about what had upset him so much about Emily's photo, but he either remained silent or dismissively told me to get back to work. He stated unequivocally that Emily would never be allowed in his home. To ensure I wouldn't feel out of place as the only unaccompanied guest at his son's birthday, he offered to have either his sister Tracy keep me company, or if I preferred, he would hire an escort. Realizing I had backed him into a corner and disregarding the chain of command myself, I said, "Come on, David, just tell me everything." He replied, "Not now, not here, and you're not going to like it, buddy." He promised to reveal everything at his son's birthday celebration, as words alone would be insufficient. I responded that her past and who she was, even if she had been a call girl or a criminal, didn't matter to me. But David shook his head, indicating that the truth was far worse than I could imagine. He asked me to be patient and made me promise not to question Emily about anything until then. Those days felt like I was walking on eggshells. I wanted to confront Emily about what she was hiding, but I remembered my promise to David. So I acted as if nothing had happened. On the day of David's son's birthday, his sister Tracy picked me up from work, as David had left early to prepare. We stopped at the supermarket where I purchased a gift. Tracy was warm towards me, and we felt a mutual connection. The house was impressive, and the celebration was magnificent. Tracy sat beside me at the table, attentively serving me various dishes. I kept trying to pull David aside for a conversation, but he assured me that the time would come when I would learn everything. After the joyous feast, he led me to his office, with Tracy also present. He unlocked his safe and retrieved a folder containing some documents. And that's when the truth was unveiled. It turned out that Emily was David's ex-wife. Yes, as you may have guessed, the boy was their son. The child believed his mother had passed away, but it was better for him to think she was dead than to know she was a cruel mother. As evidence, David showed me their divorce certificate and a family photo of the three of them with their 1-year-old son. At the time, David owned a store but was swindled by a supplier who took all his money. The banks refused to grant him a loan due to a banking crisis. Desperate, he had to borrow from shady lenders, who were essentially thugs, but he had no other option. They provided a loan at 1% interest, but later inflated it several times over. When David refused to pay the exorbitant amount, they ambushed him in a parking lot and brutally beat him. They went too far, leaving David hospitalized for 6 months and confined to a wheelchair for another year. And what did Emily do? While David was dealing with these hardships, she found herself a lover and indulged in pleasure instead of offering him even the slightest support. Then when David suffered this misfortune, she completely abandoned him for her lover, who had no interest in another man's child. He told her he wouldn't accept her with the kid, and that they would have their own children. She filed for divorce, declaring that she was leaving the child with David, as she had no need for an unsuccessful husband. David demanded that she relinquish her parental rights, threatening legal action, and she complied. He also showed me a copy of her renunciation. After Emily's departure, they began harassing his sister Tracy, threatening to take the child away. David had to sell everything: the store, his parents' vacation home, the apartment, the car. Thanks to his sister's tireless work, they managed to survive. In short, they paid off the debt. David underwent a complex surgery, and they had a child to care for. They had to start from scratch. Throughout this entire ordeal, Emily never once inquired about their well-being, the life of her son, or even provided any updates about herself. Eventually, they got back on their feet, both literally and figuratively, largely due to Tracy's unwavering support, which is why she never had the opportunity to build her own personal life. That night, I got utterly drunk, depleting a portion of David's liquor supply. I couldn't have imagined, even in my worst nightmares, that such a thing was possible. To abandon a disabled husband in his darkest hour. To forsake your own child. It was simply incomprehensible to me. The next morning, I informed David that I would be going home to collect my belongings because, after everything I had learned, I couldn't bear to be in her presence. My apartment was currently occupied by tenants, so I planned to stay in a hotel until they vacated. David suggested that instead of a hotel, I could stay with them for the time being, as their house was spacious enough to accommodate everyone. Tracy enthusiastically supported this idea. I agreed, but on one condition, that David accompany me. He initially refused, but I insisted. I wanted him to look her in the eyes and also help me gather my things. After some consideration, he agreed. However, Tracy declined to join us, fearing that she might not be able to control herself and would do something regrettable. When we arrived, I entered the apartment first. Emily immediately began accusing me, demanding to know where I had been, why I hadn't answered my phone, and claiming that she had been unable to sleep all night because of me, and so on. Then David walked in. "Well, hello, dear wife," I said, asking her how she had managed to sleep peacefully at night all these years. I went into the bedroom and hastily threw my laptop, documents, and some clothes into a bag. She started shouting that David was seeking revenge for her leaving him, and using me as a tool for his vendetta. She claimed that she had been forced to abandon her child because David had coerced her into signing the renunciation. She admitted that she had acted cruelly, but insisted that she had changed. She professed that she had long missed her son and loved me, but was ashamed. I couldn't bear to listen to this theatrical charade any longer. Before we left, David warned her, "If you dare to come within a kilometer of my son, I will destroy you. He believes you're dead, so don't force me to make that a reality." David asked if I had taken everything. I replied that I had, and had almost grabbed something extra. I removed my wedding ring and placed it on the table. I declared that I would file for divorce myself. 3 months have passed, and Emily and I are now divorced. My relationship with Tracy is blossoming, and it seems that we are heading towards marriage. I plan to propose to her on New Year's Eve. Of course, I am grateful to David for opening my eyes to the truth about Emily. Sometimes you live with someone without truly knowing who they are. You see in them what you want to see. I occasionally ask myself if I made the right choice. Emily didn't personally betray me or cause me any harm, but to abandon your own child? No, that was something I could not accept.